Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 1244, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Calendar Number 98, House Resolution 1244, a resolution providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 3884 to decriminalize and deschedule cannabis, to provide for reinvestment in certain persons adversely impacted by the war on drugs, to provide for expungement of certain cannabis offenses, and for other purposes.
Question is on ordering the previous questions. Members will record their votes by electronic device. So the yeas are 225, the nays are 160. The previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentlemen from, for what purposes, gentlemen from Georgia rise.
Madam Speaker, on that I ask for the yeas and nays.
Pursuant to Section 3 of House Resolution, the yeas 965, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. The yeas are 225, the nays are 160. The resolution is adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
On this vote, the yeas are 5, the nays are 220, and the motion is not adopted.
That's going to hand you the next thing.
What purpose is the gentleman from Massachusetts?
For what purpose the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 1244 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, for the purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, my good friend, Mr. Woodall, pending which I yield myself such time as it may consume. During consideration of the resolution, all time yielded is for the purposes of debate only. I ask unanimous consent that all members be given 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
So, Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I feel I need to respond to the meltdown that occurred right before the vote on the Republican side. You know, as the distinguished minority leader knows, House Democrats have sent 2 major coronavirus relief bills over to the Senate. Sadly, those bills have been gathering dust on Mitch McConnell's desk. He has refused to schedule a vote and a debate on those bills. But the good news is that today, at 12:45, we find out that Leader McConnell and Speaker Pelosi have spoken about their shared commitment to completing an omnibus and COVID relief package as soon as possible. I take that as good news. You know, we can walk and chew gum at the same time in this democratically controlled House of Representatives. That means we need to deal with not only passing an omnibus bill and a COVID relief bill, but we have other work that needs to be done as well. You know, I find it curious, Mr. Speaker, that the bill the minority leader objected to is a bill that deals with the unequal enforcement of our drug laws, where people are treated differently and more negatively because of the color of their skin. Really? My distinguished Republican friend did not object to any of the bills we are bringing up today, sponsored by Republicans, 5 different bills, but he chose to object to a bill that is addressing the issue of racial justice. Now, I guess I shouldn't be surprised because it is consistent with the attitudes that come out of this White House. But it also makes clear to me that the Republican Party is no longer the party of Lincoln. It is the party of some of the most intolerant voices on the right wing and those who dabble in conspiracy theories. It really is sad. You know, the Republicans made a motion that the House do now adjourn to highlight the fact that we are able to vote remotely in this chamber in the midst of a pandemic. The leader said that nearly a third of the Democratic caucus didn't vote yesterday, which, by the way, they did, because we do have responsible voting rules in place in the middle of this pandemic. But then Now get this, everybody. But then, right after saying that, 95% of the Republican conference didn't even show up to vote. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. They didn't vote in person. They didn't vote remotely. Nothing. Maybe I'm missing something here, but I don't think the strategy was very well thought through. You know, the distinguished minority leader is puzzled why we have passed rules that allow people to vote remotely during this pandemic. I have a news flash for him. Close to 275,000 people are dead. We have colleagues, both Democratic colleagues and Republican colleagues, who have been infected by this virus. And while many Republicans are rushing to attend maskless super spreader Christmas parties at the White House, we in the Democratic majority are following the guidelines by the attending physician in the Capitol, the CDC, by Dr. Fauci, by every reputable medical expert in the world. You know, operating remotely during a pandemic, I want to tell my friend, is not radical. It's not unique. It's not unprecedented or lazy. It's responsible. It's constitutional. The Supreme Court is working remotely, as are legislatures around the country and around the world. We aren't doing this because it is convenient, Mr. Speaker. We are doing it because it is necessary, and we are doing it because we want to save lives. So we invite our Republican colleagues to join us, to be responsible, and to understand why these rules are so incredibly important, and maybe set an example for others in this country, especially those who operate on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Mr. Speaker, on Wednesday, the Rules Committee met and reported a rule, House Resolution 1244, providing for the consideration of H.R. 3884, the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on the Judiciary. It self-executes a manager's amendment by Chairman Nadler, and it provides for one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Mr. Speaker, we are here today to continue our effort to reform our nation's failed approach to the war on drugs, to put racial justice at the heart of our nation's federal cannabis policy, and to make restorative justice a reality for so many Americans. This is what the public has demanded for so long, that Congress address the broken status quo that allows the color of someone's skin to dictate the repercussions of their actions. This is not hyperbole, Mr. Speaker. Cannabis accounts for over half of all drug arrests in our country. Half. Most are arrested for possessing small amounts, not for selling or manufacturing anything. That's bad enough. But today in America, you are nearly 4 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis if you're black. Communities of color use cannabis at roughly the same rate as their white counterparts. But if you look like me, Mr. Speaker, you are far less likely to face the same penalties. I'm not okay with that, and nobody should be. I'm not okay with a system that treats those who have been convicted of minor cannabis offenses like they're some kind of drug kingpin. And I'm not okay with a system that sends people to prison for cannabis-related offenses, even in states where recreational cannabis use has been legalized. To do nothing about this is intolerable, and to pretend like this is a problem for communities of color to solve alone is inexcusable. America's failed war on drugs helped create this problem. It will take a national, holistic approach to resolve it. H.R. 3884 represents a major step forward. It complements other bipartisan criminal justice reform bills passed in this Congress and in the 115th Congress. This underlying bill removes cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act, decriminalizing it at the federal level so states can set their own laws. It also puts a process in place to expunge prior convictions made in federal courts and establishes services to help those convicted of cannabis-related crimes whose lives have been harmed by the war on drugs, because no lives should be destroyed by this failed policy. Finally, this bill also makes Small Business Administration funding available for legitimate cannabis-related businesses while helping ensure people of color can participate in this thriving industry. This is what beginning to reverse the failed war on drugs looks like, Mr. Speaker. It is a testament to all those who have fought for a fresh and more effective approach year after year after year. You know, I've worked side by side with many of them in this effort since I was first elected to Congress back in 1996. And for so long, we were told the same thing. We were told to wait, to wait, to wait. Well, cannabis-related amendments couldn't even get a fair fight on this floor under the prior Republican Congresses. Not a single one was ever made in order in the 112th, 113th, or 114th Congresses. Not one. You could bring no bill to the floor related to cannabis. The only one made in order last Congress was an amendment to eradicate illegal grow operations on the National Forest System land. Congress has stood idly by for too long as communities of color in particular were being torn apart. This majority, Mr. Speaker, is committed to doing something about it. The House has debated more amendments on cannabis policy last year than it did during my entire 20 years in Congress. And now we are moving forward with the most sweeping reform, one of the most sweeping reforms in generations. This is what a more responsive Congress looks like. Now, some, particularly on the other side, have wondered, why are we moving forward with these reforms now? We must soon fund the government. We must soon fund the government for the next fiscal year and pass the annual defense bill. We are also trying to prod the Senate to get serious about a true COVID relief bill. And again, as I said earlier, we have a little bit of hopeful news based on the conversation between the Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader. We have a lot to do in the waning days of this Congress, and I get that. But the answer is simple. This is not an either-or proposition. Congress, as I said before, can walk and chew gum at the same time. A recent survey found that nearly 60% of Americans support this underlying bill. That includes a majority of both Democrats and Republicans. The facts are clear, and the public wants Congress to act. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I think it is time for us to take a stand, to stand for restorative justice, to stand for racial justice, to stand for criminal justice reform, and to stand with the majority of Americans demanding reforms to our nation's cannabis policy. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman.
And with that, Mr. Speaker, I want to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Massachusetts as chair of the Rules Committee, and I collectively thank the Rules Committee for its diligent work on the MORE Act, and that is H.R. 3884. Let me as well thank Jerry Nadler, Chairman of Judiciary, for his great work, and of course, two outstanding members, Barbara Lee and Earl Blumenauer, for their consistent and persistent determination. This morning, I spoke to a representative of the law enforcement community, and I indicated to him that we were about to move forward on decriminalizing marijuana at the federal level, eliminating federally the criminalization of marijuana and cannabis. I indicated that it was not to undermine law enforcement and not to promote drug use, but in essence to bring about justice and to provide for the right kind of roadway for what over a majority of Americans, Republicans and Democrats, want. It's an important legislative initiative. It provides a vehicle of sales tax and a vehicle that allows businesses in the marijuana business to be able to bank legally. It provides for a reinvestment program, an opportunity grant program, and as well an expungement program governed by federal courts. It ensures that there are no sales made to those under 21. It deals with substance abuse. This is a real step forward in bringing America together. And I know that my colleagues tomorrow on the floor of the House will recognize that is what we are doing. As many people know, the states that have decriminalized can continue. Those who have not can continue their laws as well. So I ask my colleagues to support H.R. 3884 when it comes to the floor. Let us do it in unity. I too want to take the opportunity